Good evening, welcome to our front. Tonight, we turn our attention to the third batch of ministerial nominations by President John Mahama. In his latest appointment, 9 more individuals have been nominated for key ministerial portfolios, signaling his administration's vision for critical sectors like education, agriculture, trade, and youth development. Among the notable nominations are Haruna Idrisu as Minister of Education, Govins Kwame Agboja for roads and highways, Elizabeth Ofosu-Ejari for trade and agribusiness, and also industry, and the National Youth Organizer of the NDC in the very person of George Opare-Addo for youth development and employment. That's empowerment. Now, the president has also announced 3 new regional ministers for Western, North, Central, and Western regions. These appointments will be subject to vetting by the Appointments Committee of Parliament, chaired by the First Deputy Speaker, Bernard Ahiafo, who has recently, after his first job, come under scrutiny for his handling of Monday's session. While some commend his stewardship, others, particularly from the NPP backbench, have accused him of partisanship. Joining us later on the show to review the appointments and their implications are political scientist Professor Richard Amakoba and distinguished agricultural economist Professor Irene Ejuri. But now, first, we are honored to have with us the immediate past First Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, Joe Osei-Usu, to weigh in on the parliamentary vetting process and its challenges and the controversies surrounding it. Good evening and welcome to you, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Now, according to NPP backbencher Member of Parliament for Tano North, the expected members of the Appointments Committee and friends of the committee to be given sufficient time to thoroughly question the nominees. Was this a reasonable or an unreasonable expectation?
Well, first, good evening to your listeners. It's very difficult for me sitting outside to determine what is reasonable or unreasonable, but certainly the Appointments Committee work is governed by rules made by the committee itself. Usually, before in the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th Parliament, or in all of these, I was a member of the Appointments Committee. We usually have a pre-sitting meeting and we'll discuss how many minutes we're allowed to each member of the committee. And once that is agreed, then a member, how many questions one member can ask. Once those are agreed, and I think that, and those rules are respected by each other. And however, unfortunately, a member feels the time short, medium, or large, that is the rule. And once it's accepted, you have to work with it. I'm not in a position to tell whether this Appointment Committee met and agreed on these rules. If they did, then however small or short the time is, unfortunately, that's what members are agreed upon. If that was not agreed, and or even if it was agreed and the chairman is not respecting it, then they may have a case to raise those matters at the next meeting.
We kept on hearing the chairman of the committee insist that these are the rules we came to an agreement on, so let's stick to these rules. But I reckon that some of the people who complained subsequently are not original members of the Appointments Committee. By the new structure or standing that has been put into this, I think this has been experimented for the first time. The friends who came in are subject area experts. They are the ones who are particularly worried about not being given the opportunity to probe further so that we can get the requisite answers that resemble a form of proper scrutiny.
Well, usually we get that kind of reaction from members who are sitting in the Appointments Committee for the first time.
Okay.
We are, for those who have the experience on it, you know that you're entitled to 3 questions. And if you are lucky, you may be allowed a follow-up. But the practice is that for any subsequent question that you may have, you forward it to your leader. That's why the leader has limitless time to ask all the questions, all the follow-up questions. So probably if anybody has a complaint, probably the leader will give them further orientation for them to understand that that is the rule of the game. Sometimes you actually deliberately raise the issues and leave the leader of, that is the ranking member, to close it up. Okay. That's how we used to do it. You leave the empty spaces, the ranking member will be making notes, and then you follow up so that you can get a conclusion on any matter that was raised by a member, which, because he has limited time, 3 questions, and if he's lucky, he may be allowed 1 or 2 follow-ups. The rest is left to the leader to conclude.
How about the claim that members were not provided with the CVs of the nominees on time, and when it was finally available, they usually, that's the claim, apportioned time for members of the committee to specifically probe the CVs were not necessarily granted this time around? Is that strange or also normal practice?
I recall that, I think it was in the 6th Parliament. We used to have people who were just doing CVs. They spend some time on CVs before we get on to the main thing. But in the 7th and 8th Parliament, we changed it. You have 3 opportunities. If you want to stick to the CVs, go ahead. If you want to do other things, go ahead. But it is the management of the committee that will determine how you want it to be done. There are no hard and fast rules about how it should be done. So I'm not in a position to say this or that rule has been breached. No. All I can say is that they have to strategize. We usually used to have one person who would do all his questions on the CVs, and then others would take the other areas that come up. So I'm sure that their management should be able to determine how they want it done.
And is this the entire committee's determination, or is the caucus within the committee that determines that, say, MPA will be the one probing the CV?
I think in that case it is the caucus which will decide how it should be done. Because largely, when the majority from whom the ministers are coming hardly ask any difficult questions.
True.
It is usually the minority that does the probing. So the minority may want to strategize and nominate 1 or 2 to just scrutinize the CVs and pick out inconsistencies and bring them out. And then other members will also focus on other things, raise questions about how the president has behaved in the past, or if there are any scandals in the skeleton of the person, you bring them out. I think that should be the work of the minority.
Now, the chairman of the committee was particularly isolated for review. The MPs insist that he was overly protective of the nominees. Is that a fair critique?
To be fair, I haven't even watched any of the proceedings. So I can't say whether that is fair or not, but I've seen in a particular case that somebody forwarded to me. I thought that my friend, chairman, was needlessly raising his voice and showing a tendency to show machoism. My style is different. We are all colleagues. Our duty is to ensure that the person qualifies in accordance with the Constitution and that he can do the work as he has been nominated to do. So I was a bit surprised to see how hard-faced the deputy speaker or the chairman of the committee was addressing one of the members of the committee. That is not my style. I wouldn't have done it that way.
Particular mention has also been made about your time as chairperson of that committee. Some insist that you are a stickler for the rules, and flexibility really was not part of the things you considered as your strength at the time. So the other view is that Bernard Ahiafo should learn from you and deliver a similar rigid application of the rules in coining questions, in delivering the questions, in what space you have for even preambles prior to the questions. Are these really, really sufficient and relevant rules?
Well, there's no rule about how a question should be asked. But it's always my style not to permit so much commentary before the question. Probably from my experience as a lawyer, I make sure that the question is straight to the point. And practically that's my style. I don't like going through the bush before you come to the main road. So I'm sure that may be the challenge that he has to deal with. But I believe strongly in the rules. I believe strongly in law and order. So if you're going off board, I'll bring you back. Please ask your question. That's me. I insist that you ask your question. You cut down on the comments before the question. If he is doing that, I think it is within his right to do that. But if you allow people to run 5 minutes of commentary and ask a 1 minute question, in the end, they answer the question before they ask them. Those are the kinds of things that I try to avoid.
This conversation about a certain convention within Parliament, that you treat leaders of Parliament differently. The majority was particularly worried about the length of time, more than 4 hours spent on the finance minister designate. The complaint was that you had always had a soft spot, or you basically spent a shorter period of time when it came to leaders. I understand it's a convention. Has this always been the case?
Well, usually it is when it comes to a person nominated as Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. Often is the majority leader ready. So, or we know him as majority leader or deputy minority leader, and then he's subsequently nominated as Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. Those ones, I think that this is our leader. We have moved it. So we even have a problem with the executive trying to take control by also appointing that person as a minister. So we usually, in fact, before I joined Parliament, what I observed, the person just came, mentioned his name, and that's all. They dismissed it. So that convention of giving respect to our leaders is truly respected, yeah. But when you are nominated a finance minister, if you're a leader and you are nominated as a finance minister, I think that's a different ballgame. You're moving from Parliament to a different area.
Okay.
I recall when Honorable Barbing, a current speaker, was nominated as a Minister for Health. We spent quite some time on him because it was not for work in Parliament. We know him as minority leader, majority leader. If you are nominated as Minister for Parliamentary Affairs, you don't need a person from outside to tell us about him. But when he was nominated for Minister for Health, he didn't get that courtesy we usually give to ministers for Parliamentary Affairs.
Now, there's also this abridgment of time when it comes to the time given to the public to send memorandum of understanding. The argument here is that they agreed to do so it should have afforded the members of the committee and its friends enough time to do the probing, since no memorandum of understanding, no memorandum was sent out there by the public or anybody in the Republic. I
am not even sure whether they advertised and allowed public sufficient time.
No, they said
I wanted to be sure about that today. So I spoke to the majority leader, the minority leader, and he told me about some arrangement they had done. But I did not see any advert. But frankly, when you're starting a term like this, I would have thought that minimum 1 week advert or 2 weeks to allow people who have issues to bring them out to the committee to enable them to do that. I did not see any publication whatsoever. So I was surprised at when, how long after the Parliament was sworn in that they started vetting the ministers.
So they
what
received
time was
it
allowed
on the 9th,
if had any?
They received it on the 9th, and on Monday they started the vetting.
They received it on the 9th of when? January?
No, yes, 9th of January, and on Monday they started the vetting.
Monday, what date was Monday?
We're talking about what? That's 12, yes.
12.
Yeah.
So what was the period that was advertised? Was used to advertise and to invite the public to bring memorandum.
Okay, Monday was actually 13th. Yes, 13th. So 9th receipt of the nomination, and 13th they started the vetting.
So I think it is the wrong step. I think that the reason we call that a public hearing is that we want to afford the opportunity for the public to participate in it. Not because it's in public, but it's because we afford the public the opportunity to participate in it if they so wish. So to receive nominations, and in fact, I asked the minority leader, the committees themselves have not been constituted. So according to him, they passed a resolution that each caucus should nominate somebody else. That is not what the standing orders anticipated. So I thought that it was a needless and a hasty, rather an indecent haste to go through with this one.
Was it probably related to the very fact that the president had promised the Republic, ahead of even being elected, that in 14 clear days, he will make sure his cabinet is in place?
What has that got to do with the standing orders of Parliament? That is the president's promise. Parliament makes its own standing orders. Parliament makes its own regulation. Is Parliament trying to please the president? If that is so, I'll be disappointed. But the truth of the matter is, the rules we have made should be respected by us.
Okay. Now, though, there's also a general review of the quality of questioning. It was a similar review, some say, that led to the indication to bring on board subject matter experts from the committees who really are in charge of some of these matters. The complaint is that generally the quality of the questioning was not very good. Is there ever a way we can fix that problem?
Well, first thing is that people must have sufficient time to research the area.
Okay.
And in this particular instance, I think that the time after the election, the swearing in, and 4 days, 5 days after that, the starting vetting, it is novel. It has never happened before that, like this before. So I think that he said haste, if I should so say, with which they proceeded with this one, may have affected the preparation of the members of the Appointments Committee in preparing to ask the questions. Let's allow them some time and see whether the situation will improve.
Well, before we go, one more thing that's also come up, the role of the minority leader and also ranking member on the committee. Is there an expectation that he has unfettered interjection powers, or he still certainly would have to come through the chairperson of the committee?
And the ranking member is highly respected by the chair because it's like a colleague. But the chair is the person who is regulating. The chair must allow you to interject. I mean, that has always been, except that in my case, as much as possible, if the ranking member wanted to say something, we also will discuss and I'll advise, hold on, let the person finish up much. So the interjections were actually regulated by me, but in a way such that it will not interfere with proceedings.
I'm grateful to you for your time this evening. Former, in fact, immediate past First Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, Joseph Osei-Owusu.
Thank you very much.
And you heard there, this came up because yesterday, the NPP, a section of the minority, in the case of the NPP, mostly first-timers, had organized a press conference and indicated the problems they had with the vetting process, with the chairperson, and raised several issues about the conduct of the chairperson. But this is to do with the vetting. As you may well be aware, earlier today, the President of the Republic of Ghana released a list. He released a list that included specific people to specific ministries. And as you see on your screen, Governor Kwame Agboja is heading to the Ministry for Roads and Highways and Education, a very controversial sector, currently bedeviled with feeding challenges. Is going to be handled by former minority leader Haruna Idrisu, who was previously handled the Ministry of Employment before, and sometime back, communication. Now, another man who was spokesperson of the NDC on the Committee of Agric, Eric Opoku, is heading to the Ministry for Food and Agriculture. And I'm sure you know that agribusiness has been added to trade. That particular section is going to be handled by a different person. And we are talking here about Elizabeth Ofosu Ajare. She is going to the trade, agribusiness, and industry place. I should be able to get on board a review of that particular sector. We have, on one hand, the individual you are seeing on your screen, Eric Opoku, handling food and agriculture. On the other hand, we also have trade, agribusiness, and industry, and that's going to be handled by Elizabeth Ofosu Ejare. This is in and of itself separate from the minister designate, specifically going to fisheries and aquaculture. That is the kind of clarification I should be getting Professor Irene Susanna Ejiri on to help us appreciate. Yeah, so we surely will be coming back to that after this break. You welcome back to UPfront. My name is Raymond Alqua. Tonight, we've been just gone by was a conversation with the immediate past First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joe Osei-Owusu, on the complaints that have been raised by minority MPs, especially backbenchers, first-timers, about the Monday vetting process. As you may well be aware, a fresh list has already been released since Monday. There's been 10 regional ministers, an additional 3 or 4, so added today, but 9 substantive ministers have equally been given the nomination. Haruna Idrisu being part of that pack heading to education. That we'll be exploring later on in this conversation. But now, I want you to take note of the gentleman who usually spoke for the NDC on Agric. That is Eric Opoku, who is heading to the Food and Agriculture Ministry. There is also a separate ministry dealing with trade and agribusiness and industry, which is also being headed by Elizabeth Ofosu Ajare. And I'm sure many of you will know that she has been a minister for tourism, culture, and creative arts before. In that ministry, Jifa Ablagomashi was the deputy minister at the time, who's been elevated or is being elevated to substantive minister now. One of the other positions I should bring to your attention this evening is that position which will be occupied by Emilia Arthur from the Western region, the Minister Designate for Fisheries and Aquaculture. I have an expert on the line now to help me understand and appreciate what these things mean. Professor Irene Ejiri is for a very long time an agric economist. She previously headed the agric school at the University of Ghana. Prof, you're welcome to UPfront.
Thank you, Raymond, and thank you for bringing me here this evening.
Brilliant.
Good evening. viewers and listeners.
Prof, I just want to first understand the separation of this ministry, all related to agric and its linkages. First, food and agriculture is separate. 2, fisheries and aquaculture is also a standing ministry. Then, agribusiness, it's not with either food and agriculture or fisheries and aquaculture, but rather with trade. Is that a very good rearrangement of that particular sector?
All right. So, agribusiness is trying to get a linkage of all the business activities that relate to agriculture. That is how I have put it. And therefore, trade and the things that are done in terms of preparing for distribution, whether it's in agriculture or otherwise, can actually be in that ministry. So I don't have any problem, because when we had food and agriculture, there was a desk that was also supposed to give good attention to the business activities and try to get the people who undertake the activities to be oriented to do business. Now, why is it taken to trade and industry? Probably, I don't know what thinking went into it, but probably they want to give a good budget that will allow the capacity improvement of actors in the agricultural value chain who need to orient properly to bring in money. Because you know that for agriculture, the culture we have had in Africa and in Ghana has been to use frontier materials. Sometimes you may not even have specific knowledge or special knowledge, but you can till the soil, raise livestock, capture fish, eat at home, or take it to the market. If you like, then you can do business with it. So I believe that because we have not grown much, and it appears that scope is also widening, they needed to put a highlight and give it a specific attention. It could have been done at the Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Why they take it to another ministry is something that probably a lot of thinking has gone into. So I can't blame anybody. All I'm saying is that where it is now, I expect that the business of agriculture, from procurement, production, because farm business is part of agribusiness.
Okay.
Now, if you have farmers that you need to orient to be more business-like, then agriculture and trade, agribusiness and industry ought to hold hands as they used to be, but this time more strongly, so that we don't forget about these, what they call peasants or small-scale farmers or smallholders, as we call them, because that is what we have been doing over the years, trying to push them to the business frontier. It has not worked well, and probably that is why we think that it should go to industry, so that the lens that will be put on it will now be looking for where do we get the money, but not where do we get the food, because that food can just go to household and not be part of the market. That is my understanding.
Now, of course, I was right there in this studio when the NDC put out this manifesto, just like when the NPP also put out their manifesto. We reviewed the various sections of agriculture in there. Do you get a certain sharp focus on agribusiness, isolating that for attention and the trade in this particular determination of a ministry that has been renamed?
No, because trade has always also concentrated on agri-trade. Remember cocoa trade, the non-traditional sector, a lot of pineapples, mangoes, papaya, fish, things going as exports. They were all treated as trade. Remember, things that we import, we bring them in to do agriculture are captured as part of services, so trade. Do you get me?
I get your point.
The processing part of agriculture. So once I am adding value to cassava or pineapple or cocoa or even fish, turning them into whatever value-added forms, they move from agriculture in terms of data to trade and industry. So for me, I am saying that once you rename, I believe there will be a desk and a specific budget to execute the actions we've been calling for adequately, because agriculture has never been given an adequate budget. And that is why its big scope has never been covered. Remember agriculture's goal, no hunger, but it's also planting for food and jobs. Planting or rearing for food and jobs. Do you get me? We are raising livestock not only for food. And we couldn't do it much because not much of budget was given to the prioritized areas. So I am expecting that now that you put it in trade, it means you put a separate budget to do all the capacity building, to put in the infrastructure, to bring the professionals, to make sure that things are done well and the value addition part of agriculture is well handled, to bring grace back to our agriculture.
Of course, for some time now, the previous government did it. We have always had this idea of separating fisheries and aquaculture from food and agriculture. Is this still a very sensible alternative that we should be keeping on?
Agriculture's scope is big. So it's not separated. It's just that you give it a different department.
Okay.
So that there is a departmental head. If you want to call it a ministry, that is fine. But I'm saying that as long as you give it a different department, a different head, team of people should come in capable to execute plans that you have put in place. Unfortunately, my problem is that whether you change name or not, you will have the plans. I have been on round tables for trade, for aquaculture, for the fisheries and aquaculture, for agriculture. We have put nice plans. We have put prioritization. We have put budgets, investing for food and jobs. Go and open that document. I was part of the discussion. At the end, the budgets will be discussed. The budget part of it will be approved, but little will be released late for any execution. That is my problem.
Now,
My problem is not with the names at all.
Okay.
My problem is that those units you are creating, you are bringing professionals, and we have a lot. You see the people they have mentioned, you see their capabilities showing on paper, and then what we have read on them, we have related with some of them. Some people know them, so there is knowledge, there is experience, we have a lot of expectations, and they will learn because these are not too old people, and therefore they will learn. But as usual, will the budget be released even when little on time for us to execute the plans we put in place? That is the problem.
Professor, you did isolate that the experience. You talked about the people they are put on paper.
Yes.
For example,
what is on paper is beautiful.
Eric Opoku is ranking on the Food, Agriculture and Cocoa Affairs Committee. He has a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Law from KNUST and LLM in Distinction International Business Law from the University of Essex in the UK. Now, yes. But he's been speaking for the NDC on Agric.
I learned elsewhere that he has his own farms.
Certainly, yes.
Been a farmer
he's a farmer
for a long time.
In fact, he advertises that consistently. So,
well, it means that, like me, I understand not only the learning from others, but I also manage a mango farm, and so I know it's in my skin. I understand. But will that allow me to execute the plan on time, even when the budget is not released? That is my problem. Because this is an experienced man in terms of organizing people. You know how to execute, organize the right people. And in that ministry, the chief director, there are directors. These are the technocrats. They know the agriculture. They know the aquaculture. They know the agribusiness. They are the people they will put together so that this head will now chair and then speak with them, get their minds, she herself, he himself, doing the right thing in terms of organizing the right people, collaborating, holding hands, bring other ministries like health, even tourism, who are all part of the food and agricultural, agribusiness value chain. For me, everybody will be there. That is how we work in this country. Unfortunately, the budget will be planned, the budget will be discussed, the budget will be approved. Some only will be released late. It has been like this. I've been in this for 30 years. I'm retiring this year, and I'm tired. I'm telling you.
Prof, I mean,
so I'm not enthused about who is put there.
Okay.
I am just praying that the ministers who need to release funding on time, the monies will be found so that if it's issues with irrigation, we know that is number one, because we have depended on rains. And when God decides to mix the climatic factors in a certain way, you cannot stop him. So he has told us, do irrigation, create ponds for your fish, so that if my sea is not yielding, if my lake is not yielding, if my river is not yielding, you can feed fingerlings. Then people called private sector would like a creation of an environment that incentivizes them. I have to borrow at 30%, 40% to invest. It is not good enough. Is somebody going to look at agricultural and agribusiness and aquaculture and marine financing to create the environment for me to continue to work in the sector? We don't say government should come and work in the sector in terms of putting investment capital in production. Create a good environment. Let me borrow at 10%, at 5%, and then let me learn and do my own thing. When I need inputs, whether it's organic or conventional, are people investing called input dealers? Do we have enough in every district so that you don't have to travel long distances to get your inputs? If you want electricity on your farm so that you can do greenhouse gardening, greenhouse farming, do value addition, can you have consistent electricity? Going to my farm, just from Agomeda to Lom, the road is so bad, it's not interesting. Is the road going to be done well? Rural roads, are they going to be paved such that if I go inside the Western region to get my land for oil palm, I will be happy flying to Takrady, moving with my whatever picker, and not telling me that I should get down and walk for 3 miles or walk for 30 miles before I get to my farm. That is what we have. We want the ministries that have been put together to be able to get the plans executed. First step is there already. If you come and change its name, fine. I am saying that investing for food and jobs is there already. Technocrats put it together. It was not the minister. We were all there as academics. There were professionals. There were experienced farmers. We have put together the documents. What has not happened is adequate budget that is released on time. Sometimes it comes on time. There may be leakages here and there. We will talk about that. But I believe that if you brought in the money on time, then monitoring, evaluation, accountability, research and learning will go on. And somebody should be sacked when we hear and we prove that the person is doing the wrong thing. Sharp, sharp. That's what I'm expecting my excellency to do. Sharp, sharp. The people who are not sticking to the rules and pulling us back. Because his is a project, 4-year project. We cannot afford at all delayed budget releases. That is what I want to say. I don't care too much about these qualifications.
It's an interesting perspective you put in there.
Yes, because I've been a dean before. I've been a dean before. It shouldn't take a professor to be a dean. That's what I said. Give me the money because I know what I want to do. Whether you are a PhD holder or not, if you are good, you can organize people at the school level and execute projects. If you don't get that environment that gives you budget to work at your plan on time, forget it. Whether you are full professor, associate professor, or Mr., it doesn't matter. You have nothing to show. And that's what I bring to this discussion. Whoever is coming, I'm happy there are 2 females and a male, but it doesn't matter to me. Women, I back it. I myself, I like equity, equality of opportunity, and I have seen it. I'm happy. Will you give them the budget on time to execute? So when they fail, then we know we have given them enough resources. Then we know we have given them enough human capacity, enough money, enough infrastructure called facilities. You get me? If you don't do that, then you are incapacitating a very good, qualified, experienced person. And we have seen it. You get me? We have seen it. I'm so emotional about this because this work I have done for 30 years, speaking to these issues year on year. We have not seen much progress in our agriculture and agribusiness space. It has grown. If you look at the tables, if you look at the graphs, it has grown, but it is too slow. I have gone to every continent looking at their agriculture. Moving, go to South Korea, go to India, go to Southern Africa, even Kenya. Rwanda is putting things together and executing. They are saying we want to do clustering. You can't do pineapple here. If you want to invest in pineapple, come to this area. Land tenure system is well zipped. Look at our land tenure system, where somebody is doing cocoa and all of a sudden he decides that he will use that land for galamsey. Where is the leadership between mines and agriculture? Because it's the same land. And that is what the agricultural minister is going to suffer. A lot of the agricultural lands that should remain for cocoa, for rubber, for cashew, for oil palm, they are going under. I'm expecting that he will work to get things right. Is he able? Let the qualifications be there. Will he be backed by the big people called President himself, making sure that you can't do this with cocoa land? If that is not done, it's our agriculture going forward, whether we call it agriculture and agribusiness or you call it agriculture and food, it doesn't matter to me.
Now,
to all the countries, they call agriculture, some people just call crops and livestock. Some people call agriculture, and in Nigeria, it's actually agriculture is part of local government.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So I don't mind. I'm saying that we need production. We need trade. We need processing. You get me? Get the things that ought to be there. I don't have to borrow money at 30% to do my mango farming. And when I need the inputs, I should be able to borrow money or use my own savings because I have sold and made money. That is what is incentivizing. But we have a situation where there are all kinds of distortions around the agriculture itself. And so moving the business to another area, I am not enthused. I'm not against it. All I'm saying is that please get a good head and give him the support to execute activities on time.
Should they continue with the Planting for Foods and Jobs 2.0?
Yes, call it another name because of politics. Call it another name. But if you look at the components, it's the perfect thing. Where you want to link aggregators, you see, trade, they are the focus. So Agriculture Ministry already knew that trade should drive, and that is theory. The market drives. The market is driving the production. It's a supply response.
Well, I seem to have had a difficulty with the connection to Professor Irene Susanna Eju, a professor of agric economics at the University of Ghana, School of Agric, analyzing the nominations to the sector of agric, food and agriculture, which is related to fisheries and aquaculture, and also the new kid on the block, featured in the middle of trade and industry, is agribusiness. And she's just summed it up. Without appropriate budgeting, regardless of how you term it and the focus you want to give it, it will not achieve the needed results, because we've been doing this for quite some time. I should be able to bring you some more thoughts of the other ministers into this conversation. Professor Richard Amwakoba is a political scientist. It is a hope that he joins us briefly on this all-important conversation about the fresh set of ministers President John Dramani Mahama has already nominated to the various ministries. I am particularly interested, as a former lecturer, to hear what his thoughts are on Haruna Iddrisu to the Education Ministry, comparing him, for example, to the Honorable Dr. The MP for Bosomche, who just left that particular position, Osei Yao Educhum. Same vision, better vision. Is he going to be able to drive education? Will he fix the problems around the free SHS and its implementation? That is also called to the conversation. So certainly, I should be able to get Professor Richard Amwakoba to speak to on this particular matter. But I need to conclude this conversation with Professor Irene Susanna Eju. Prof, you were consistently drawing into focus this conversation about take advantage of what is existing and move it forward, not just the talk around it. There are some of us who are saying it is the end result. If we have non-imported food being cheaper, be it on the market or where we buy food, that is how we judge the success of our agri sector. Would it be far-fetched?
Well, and that's a good idea, actually. If you want to bring down the food prices in this country, that's what you do.
Forgive me, I suspect I have Professor Richard Amwakoba on, and I cannot hear Professor Irene Susanna Eju. So, Prof, you're welcome. Professor Richard Amwakoba, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Forgive me, because I'm running out of time. I want to just drill down to the point. Is Haruna Iddrisu fit and proper for education?
Well, I think so, because the Minister of Education is not the one who comes up with a budget or anything like that. He can help the budget in terms of how you allocate resources. But his main job is leadership. Leadership, proactive leadership, especially with teacher unions and so forth. Since Haruna has been Employment and Labor Minister before, that will come in very handy. And his character fits that role, to engage them ahead of time before any issues come up. In this environment, you don't want any talk about strike this and strike that, you see. So you have to be proactive, engage the teachers and so forth, let them know what is going on. And the advantage is his hands are not tied behind him. He can talk to them about this real situation on the ground, unlike the former government that you are not allowed to say certain things. You see, so if there's no money, you can say there's no money, let them know ahead of time, so that if there's going to be a bit of hardship or tightening belt, they will understand. So it's not going to be as bad. He's well suited for the job. In terms of leadership, he is well suited. He may not know the nitty-gritty of the education department, but he won't take any time to bring himself up to speed.
Before his appointment, we had a man who was really a man of the sector. That is Dr. Osaya Edichum, because he lives, breathes, and is everything education. He's done a lot of work in the sector too. Would you think that Haruna Iddrisu can fit into his shoes?
Well, it's not just that, because his shoes, the former minister's shoes, pretty much did not fit because he didn't have the resources to do the work, you see. If you don't have the resources, no matter how smart you are or how hard you work, it won't make any difference. The children go to school, all of a sudden they say the food is finished, go home. What is he going to do? He has to pay for it himself. So that is a big problem. But if you have a minister and a government that allows free flow of information, you get certain headmasters to monitor what is going on, let you know when the food level is at this point or that point. So if you have to close early, you know, make preparations. That is what we are looking for, consistency and continuity. You see, not all of a sudden go home. No. Sometimes they say go home. The children, that same day, you have to leave campus. Some two came from a long distance. How are they going to cope? That's the problem. And so that one, I'm very sure he can do very well.
Now, there's also the question about the general appointment so far. I want your general assessment of what John Dramani Mahama has done so far. He put out 3. Then came the regional ministers, 10 of them. Now we have 9 substantive ministers, most likely cabinet-level ministers. And finally, we've seen a list of other regional ministers coming on board. The quality, the ability to deliver ratio of the people that has been appointed so far, what's your general assessment of them?
Well, so far so good. That's what I'll say. So far so good, because I haven't done anything yet. So we cannot assess them based on performance. So let's wait a little bit on that side. But I can tell you that regional ministers are pretty much the same. You have to get to know certain people in your region, the leaders in the region, and have people who monitor certain things for you. The so-called early warning signals. People who can tell you this is going on, this is going on, this is not going well, so forth. So you can take proactive steps and calm things down before it comes to a head. That is what is really needed, especially now that we don't have money. It's not everything you can solve with money because you don't have it, you see. And so if you are proactive, it helps you. Talk to them, engage them, let them know what is going on. Don't hide things from them at the previous government day, as if we have money. Let the parents pay some of the school fees. They no. No, we can pay free. It's free SHS. But free, but it's not free. Everybody can tell you. Any parent who had a child in boarding school can tell you it was not free. If the government didn't know, I'm telling you now, it wasn't free. People were afraid to speak up like that. The headmasters, for example, will not say anything. But they know it was tough, and it was not free. So these 15 days were very important to the children because that's when you go and give them money, give them food. No joke, this is boarding school. We never did that. So once in a while, your parents will bring you food, but in this 10 day, you don't go and give your child some food, he's in trouble.
I'm grateful to you, Professor Richard Amwakoba. He's a political scientist helping us review the appointments so far. And that's where we tie the nice ribbons on today's edition of UPfront. Many thanks to you out there for watching. Many thanks to you, Professor Irene G, and also to you, Joe Oseusu, former First Deputy Speaker of Ghana's Parliament.